Broken Blade. But I do think that practice on this stage is really important. We've seen teams ramp by playing more games with the pressure of the competition actually on your shoulders. We'll see whether G2 can utilize that as we have dove in to pick and ban already. The Poppy and the Rumble both taken away. Anti-Yordle here on the side of G2 as the Varus and the Pantheon also removed. We'll see whether the Gwen is going to be the next one. There it is on the blue side, and now like a Vi or a Talia or a Nazir, something like that could be taken away, and there is the Vi.
So the Azir is open here for Caps to take, should he want it.
Is it Talia, though, and then you're like, I've got the better side of the matchup?
It depends on how you want to play out the game and what kind of draft you're looking for, because obviously Talia is strong in the matchup and has a lot of global power, but doesn't quite have the same damage output later on that the Azir is going to provide. So, and also Azir has strong engage. They do look for this Talia, and we'll lock that one in first. And this may mean that BLG are looking for the Azir perhaps later on in this series and might actually look for something else instead. There's no Pantheon here, but you could still go for an Ahri composition if you want to play that way, if you want to look for dive with Knight. The Orianna is more common these days, and it's going to just be the Orianna Nocturne combo here. We haven't really seen this yet this tournament, and you know, it's a tale as old as time. You put the ball on the Nocturne goes in deep, you press R, and you set up the combo.
Yep, it is pretty unavoidable as well if it does work out. We've seen it messed up many, many times as well, which is a whole lot of fun. But here's a hover of a fun one here that G2 have played in the past as Dr. Mundo being considered, but I don't think that's going to be the lock-in. Zyra Khan possibly just locked away here, and that is exactly what's going to happen.
I mean, Hans Sama has showcased already that he is phenomenal on this champion, this tournament, and we know he's played it a ton successfully in the past, but I mean, very recently, as recently as yesterday, extremely dominant on this pick.
What was that, the triple fountain laser?
The triple fountain laser. Plus the fact that, you know, oftentimes if you just keep adding more CC, it's hard for the Xayah to survive, but I feel like against Nocturne Orianna specifically, it's actually really easy to mitigate that combo. The addition of the Nico, though, does make it a little bit tougher. Also will make the laning phase a little bit tougher here for Hans Sama and Labrov down there in the bottom side. So I like this pick here for BLG.
Yeah, this is a fun one, and a lot of combo potential out of BLG right now. I like the global as well coming through from the Nocturne, but will mean that the early game should be something that G2 can attack with their last couple of picks potentially. We'll see what Skewmund and Broken Blade do want to do, but so, the Wukong not going to be a part of that.
Wukong is gone, Poppy is gone. I know it's not everyone's favorite right now. It's a bit controversial, but I do feel like you could play Kalista Nico in this bottom lane with this draft. It goes pretty hard. It's really strong into the bottom 2v2. Opting to ban the Ezreal is quite interesting, especially considering this draft here. I'm not 100% sure if Elko's really considering that one. You have strong engage. You have the Weaver's Wall, you know, into looking for a flip back. You have the Rakan, so it's a safe pick there, but not necessarily, I think, what BLG were looking for, as the jungle's getting pinched.
Yeah, I would say that something like Kai'Sa is the most common answer into Xayah, has been since 2017, but there's also the Jinx. Jinx into Xayah has been always just incredible.
Yeah, I mean,
but that is not going to be considered for now.
Kai'Sa's super easy to follow up on this dive with. Like you said, already strong in the matchup in general.
Wow, that's more scaling.
I mean, the Jace ban makes sense considering how much you can outrange this Xayah. As Lucian is going to be an interesting consideration here.
It's a lot of early game power as well, especially in the laning phase alongside the Nico. And it will be the Kai'Sa in the end. Seen this many, many, many times.
I think it was potentially an error to ban the Ezreal instead of the Kai'Sa here. We'll see if that does really come back to bite G2 here in this first game, because the comp just really couldn't be simpler for BLG right now.
We've seen this so many times. Almost this exact composition. Maybe the Nico support isn't as common, you know, back when we used to see this in the past, but Kai'Sa, Nocturne, and Orianna all together is... yeah, it's pretty standard. And speaking of standard, the K'Sante going to be locked away here. And if they were watching the previous series, you can understand why the K'Sante is looking pretty good. Flandre making it look broken. Showmaker quotes all over the internet after that.
Yeah, I wonder what Bin wants to play into this. As the jungle pick is also quite interesting because so much is taken away. No Vi, no Wukong, no Xin Zhao. And Jarvan here, the consideration, but considering how mobile this composition is, as well as how well you can re-engage after the engage, it's going to be a little bit tricky to play. I think it's strong into Orianna, can be quite powerful into the Nocturne. So we could have either seen just the Scion brick wall here into this Cassante, or they could have opted for something a little bit more aggressive in this top lane, like a Gnar. That would have actually been great for their team fighting, would have been strong in the matchup, but looking like the Scion is the way they want to play this. Also just such a strong front line to help set up these team fights and fight in the neutral here for BLG. The Xayah pick felt really good when it was just the Nocturne Orianna. That was the main problem, but now you have the Nico, now you have the Kai'Sa, as well as even this sticky Scion that you have to deal with. So I think Weaver's walls are going to be incredibly important. If you can control the space around the map, also the Cataclysm that Skumon has to kind of warp the battlefield, can give some additional space here to Hans Sama, because it is an extremely low-range composition here for BLG. We know what Hans Sama could do with a lead into a composition like this. Even the extremely tanky Scion is not necessarily going to be a match for Hans Sama's late-game damage.
Especially when there's so many things they can construct. You mentioned it already. The Cataclysm is going to be so incredibly good at just denying the train. They can just lay stuff over the tracks all over the place. Weaver's Wall, of course, another example of that. And we've spoken about this. Like, the way you beat Xayah is to outrange her, and they don't necessarily do that. What they do, though, is they dive on top of her to take her down. So that Featherstorm usage is going to have to be immaculate from Hans Sama. But once they do get through that initial salvo of the team fight, there is a chance this guy on your screen right now will be able to take control. Some fun drafts here for game number one, I'm not gonna lie.
Of all the games you and I have cast this tournament so far, I feel like this is the closest draft. I feel like both teams have a really strong draft and really strong win cons here. And they absolutely know exactly what, because the identity is so different, they know exactly what they need to do to make sure the enemy team can't get those same advantages. And I think for BLG, it's to get that mid-game snowball rolling. And for the side of G2, it's to position well, it's to utilize the terrain that their champions can create to buy space for Hans Sama to be that triple fountain laser once again. Yep. What a sick game one draft we have here set up.
Yep, this is very, very cool. As, yep, not quite the names, but that is absolutely fine, as here we are representing Fnatic as well as Skumon. You love to see that. Somewhere Cyanide is like, thanks, bro. Thanks for that. Thanks for the representation. We appreciate it. As BLG, I don't know about that bin skin, like the Viking Scion one. Not exactly my favorite, but that's okay. They can't all be Lumberjack Scion, you know?
I haven't had that many opportunities to commentate a lot of LPL teams, throughout my relatively short, compared to a lot of others, League of Legends casting career.
Yeah, I like how like 4 or 5 years is short.
It's just, I mean, a lot of casters obviously have been covering this game for nearly a decade or over, and so I'm excited. It's my first time getting to commentate Knight, Bin, Elk, these legends on.
And you know what? We're gonna hold it here so that you can bask in being able to do that, Wolf.
Yeah, I've always really been a big fan of Knight's playstyle and how incredibly strong and dominant he has been over the last few years. As also a fellow left-handed player myself, I don't use the mouse on my left hand though.
Yeah,
I'm just a fraud. Every time I tried to move the mouse to the left side, it annoyed everyone in the family, and it was just like, well, I guess I'm going to adapt and use my right hand. But in a different world, maybe with a more tolerant, more left-handed family, maybe I could have been like Knight.
Yeah, well, you could have been like Freak as well. Freak is the only other guy that I know that actually uses a left-handed mouse.
Naniwa, famously in StarCraft 2, was a left-handed mouse guy. It is one of the hardest, in terms of tech pauses and replacing hardware, it is one of the hardest mice to replace, one of the hardest hardware issues you can have. So if you're a left-handed player, you really have to make sure, especially if you use an older mouse, that you hoard it. Like you're on eBay, you're trying to make sure you've got all the left-handed mice of that model that exists just in case.
And like, that must have been even harder in StarCraft as well, because everyone was so particular. What was that, like, that one SteelSeries mouse that like everyone needed to have, and then there was that one guy that like bought all of them in an entire country, or something like that.
Yeah,
like 50.
It happened a lot. I mean, I remember Naniwa telling me about the super old Logitech mouse that he used back then. That was rare. Anyways, we are digressing quite a bit here as the fans are ready for this game to get going. Luckily, the timing of this tech pause means it's not going to affect the game really in any real sense. We just had 5-point starts and vision checks going on at the beginning of this one, and hopefully we'll be getting back into the action for you guys as soon as possible. A tense one, though. Caps giving the thumbs up gives me hope that perhaps that means something has been resolved.
Yep, and cheer for the faith. I kind of like that little card there. Of course, the first that we're seeing of BLG here in this tournament, I think not having the MSI that they really wanted. This is a squad that has been so incredibly close to so much glory for so long, right? Like this, the name BLG, Billy Gaming, has just been formidable for many years. Being able to take MSIs away from T1, things like that, certainly has been impressive in the past. But
I mean, it has been just synonymous with showing up in a big way at international events and being a top team in the LPL to earn those tickets. And this is no exception here for this BLG roster. So, you know, a big one here for them to try to end up making semis out of this best of 3 and try to do what Top Esports could not for the region last year.
Of course, Top Esports weren't exactly in the greatest position last year, but still managed to make the distance. So we have seen some of these more underdog teams finding the angles. See what can happen here as G2 looking to do exactly the same thing and buck the trend that was that 3-0 for BLG. They could make it a 4-0 with a game 1 start here. As Elk already putting on some pressure here towards this bottom side. This is going to be a tough lane.
Yeah, tough to lane into a Nico, just in general. She's just going to offer so much poke and harass in the lane. And you can see Hanzama and Lebrov are just taking the brunt of it for now.
Yep, and Lebrov, any of these Qs that he misses, it's just going to feel bad, right? Getting that extra healing is so important.
It's so necessary to be able to deal with that poke, because if you end up going down to a 3rd health here, I mean, you're going to have to start chugging potions, you're going to be diveable. In a lot of cases, not in this matchup where you're playing against a Nocturne, so you're feeling good about that at least, but you know, if it were a Poppy or something like that passing down here, you'd start to feel real nervous about getting that chunked out.
Well, Caps, you can see, taking a bit of damage, but does have control of the wave for the moment.
Yeah, he's chosen to hit the minions instead of the champion to push this wave in, as Knight's getting the harass off with this Orianna with the ramp-up damage.
Yeah, Caps with a couple of minions here, so Knight not going to go for any sort of weird all-in. Did look a little bit strange when the seismic shove put Knight in melee range. But it is going to be just some very early resets as Knight actually thinks better of it for the moment. Caps goes back. We'll be teleporting back in once again. So nothing really gained just yet, but you can see in the lanes, it's BLG getting the majority of the shove here as there is the snare on top of Lebrov. He's down to 200, and that's just first blood. It goes over to On, and this has started early for BLG.
Yeah, this is massive, and Hanzama going to potentially lose some farm here as well. We'll see how much of this he can pick up once that cannon so desperately, and we'll get that at least, but
we'll never know.
I'm pretty sure he did get it. Yeah,
number went up.
I'm like 99% sure he got it. Based on the timing of that auto flying when we panned away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a great target there on the Lebrov. We'll watch this again as On plays this very aggressively. Clones gets the heal to move forward, and even with the attempt to escape, that Lebrov is still caught by the edge of it. If he avoids it, totally different scenario, but he gets caught by just the edge there, and thought he would alone with his heal be able to get through, but doesn't flash and is punished as a result. So big win here as a Cull gets picked up on the back for Elk, and he is just really cashing in on hitting that mid-game spike with this team composition.
Yeah, it's looking real scary. So we have some pings out here from Knight. Had an idea that maybe Skewmond was in the area, but does decide to go back. And first blood, 500 gold lead, something like that, approximately here for BLG. And it looks like they're picking things up basically right where they left off as far as that MSI start was concerned against G2 this season, or this year, you could say. But it is still early days, and of course there's a lot of scaling on the side of G2 as well.
Yeah.
Xayah is no slouch. There's not a massive amount of range on BLG's side.
The bigger concern for G2 would be if they ended up giving over 2 kills on a Grub or early Dragon fight, for example. That's what you really don't want. But losing the Rakan early stings, and it does accelerate BLG slightly, but it's not the end of the world, especially because the kill went to On instead of Elk. Still a significant lead here for Elk, but at the end of the day, like you said, you know, some accidents can happen in this early game. You have a lot of wiggle room with how the scaling works here. Just the mid game that you're more concerned about than some of these early snafus.
Yep, I would agree. So not necessarily end of the world, but world is not exactly like a happy place, especially here in the mid lane. As Caps, I mean, that clockwork is just wound up, and there is the flash away here from Caps. Doesn't have teleport this time to try and make his way back, and that gold lead that was minuscule is now going to balloon unless Skewmon can get something done here.
I guess Knight had it calculated. I thought he had maybe with that windup would have had just a flash auto for the kill there, but maybe just a little bit, not enough damage there, so just opts to take flash from Caps instead. Look for the Q. And BLG, with all this prio, looking for the Dragon. No denial available, even with Lebrov's unsealed, he doesn't have the smite ready.
Well, this is a 3v3. The flash actually out from Beishwan as the double knockup comes through from Lebrov. They find the root onto Elk, but I think he's going to be able to make his way out to safety. Some good aggression here for G2, but it is only that flash that's going to be picked up here by the squad on the back end. Lebrov taking a fair bit of damage here, but of course he's Rakan, so not exactly in the most danger.
This is a really,
find something.
Yeah, really tricky dive to pull off here for G2, especially with how low Lebrov is. I just don't think this is going to work out. They're looking for Elk.
There's a flash forward, flash traded, and you'll be happy about that. If you're G2, getting the 80 carries flash could be a big opportunity here. As Knight taking a bit of damage, the threaded volley here from Caps, but he's on the wrong side of being able to make money in his lane.
I like that move from Lebrov there because the positioning of Elk away from the turret makes him a vulnerable target. Speaking of vulnerable targets.
Yeah, On in a lot of trouble here as Lebrov looking to try and make his way in. A lot of damage here already by Skumon. Just needs another flag and drag. And Elk, remember, does not have the flash, so needs to get back towards that turret, try and keep himself safe. And Hans Sama, he's come down, he's popped the ghost, and that will be the kill. Going over to Hans, the Ignite is now on. And now Bin's in a little bit of trouble as well. Broken Blade. We'll see what he can actually get done. Just dashes away as he sees Beishwan, but there is that kill. And it's a double for Hans Sommer in that bottom lane. G2 on the board.
And unlike that play that happened earlier, we're like, oh, it's not the end of the deal. Lebrov dies early. This is a huge deal for G2's composition. For 2 kills to go over to Hans Sama this early, he has swung the pendulum of that gold lead about 1,000. He was about 400 down. Now he's 600 up here. Picks up a BF sword, and the G2 fans are going wild because we know what Hans Sama can do with the lead. We saw it already just yesterday on this champion, and they stuck out the extended dive, right? Like it wasn't going to work initially, but they were super patient with it. They got multiple flashes and then waited for that punish. G2 very methodical, and now in a really nice position in this early game.
They really are. Paranoia comes down. That is going to be Beishwan finding Skumon here, who just flashes away. Not going to get feared, but it should be his blue buff going awry. Lebrov looking to try and make something happen, though, as it's down to 38 health. Thank goodness. Beishwan did not have his smite available, so that was a bit close. Does manage to get the steal and now looks for the grubs.
Yeah, looking for this off of the play with the ult. Doesn't get the kill, but it's enough pressure here. As Lebrov, still no smite at the ready. I don't know if he really wants to go in here anyways, as they're just going to group around it. I mean, Caps does have ultimate if he could find the right angle.
Well, On could be in a little bit of trouble here as Hans Sama putting some feathers on the ground, and On now finds himself in the back of the pit. No flash available, and he is not getting out of this. BLG, can they actually get anything off the back end? And the answer is no, as Caps goes down to 50%. BLG will lose their support, and that is going to be feats of warfare already put together here for G2. Going from strength to strength, not actually getting enough of the grubs in order to get themselves a feat there, but I don't think that that is going to worry them too much, keeping things very even here in this game.
The kill goes to Hans Sama. It's a 3rd kill on the Xayah. I think this is 100% worth for G2, and BLG didn't even get the triple. They only get the 2 out of 3 for this, and I mean, Caps knows he can engage from so far away there. The sacrifice of On, I think, is not worth it, and BLG had a great start, right? But things are looking a little bit more rickety in this game now, considering how much late game scaling they have. As Caps comes in here late and On is just left alone. They get the grub there, but ultimately just 2 out of 3. The kill goes over to Hans Sama. You can see Knight wants to set something up, but the split here is so good for G2. The positioning is so strong. The Orion is not going to get a multi, and G2 fans feeling positivity back to back here. And now this Xayah already has Yuntals, and she's just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, this is a very big 80 carry on the side of G2, and that is only going to get worse. I think 3 items is where you're going to feel really good as this Xayah, and so that is still not quite there just yet, but hitting that first item before the Kai'Sa feels absolutely amazing. What doesn't, though, is the bottom lane, or the top lane, or what you want to call it in this game. It's the Cassante versus the Scion, because Bin is just kind of running away with it, just having a really good time, has his Sunfire Cape now completed, as we can see, and we'll be driving towards that top side. Do you call it driving when it's a train? Because normally a train is on tracks, right? You wouldn't really be driving.
I think he's just charging, you know? He's charging quite aggressively.
Perambulating.
He will get his teleport up relatively soon here, so if they are going to try to hard force, they need to be aware of that. He's going to get some free push here in the top lane off of that ultimate, and BLG will disengage. But the Scion being your big gold lead isn't necessarily how this mid game is supposed to look here for BLG. They'd rather it be on on the Kaisa or particularly on the Nocturne so they can continue to snowball. They're not out of this game by any means, but fights like this early on around a Dragon are how they need to control the tempo. Because if G2 get a Dragon here and buy that extra time, it really puts a big wrench in their gears. Well, looking for the cap pick.
Combo, and even with the flash, it is going to be a lot of damage, and a cap's going down. There is the snare connecting onto Skumond as well. He does make it out.
And they should be able to turn this into a 2-Drake lead here. It is Infernal Dragon worth of stats as well. This is pretty massive here for BLG. Not to mention, as you said, Cap's flash still gets caught, so now doesn't have his flash available for a follow-up potential setup there with the Nocturne.
Now they don't have any of the ultimates, though.
Yeah.
And On isn't level 6 yet, and so Hans Sommer is actually feeling like he's pretty capable of just walking up here next to Labrov.
And Caps does have TP, control. And they are just going to give this away, like you say. This is actually kind of huge. Like I said, buying that extra time feels massive, and with that commitment there, BLG just don't feel like they can actually win the fight straight up.
Yeah, beautifully done. And good realization there from G2 that they were powerful, considering the amount of cooldowns that were used just to kill this Taliyah, who then is able to just immediately teleport back to the lane. So really nicely done, making sure they don't give up something that they don't need to just from the intimidation tactics.
With a trade of 1 Drake apiece, it is going to be for whoever gets it a 3 Mountain Soul for either a Cassante or this Scion. And frankly, that's incredibly powerful. So these next few Dragons, how they stack up is going to be really, really important. Even the Jarvan is going to really enjoy those additional resistances later on in the game and the shield that comes with it. So pretty impactful soul here.
Let's see how this one's going to go. You're exactly right. I think either team is going to feel absolutely fantastic about that Mountain Soul. BLG mainly just for Scion, but Skumond and Broken Blade are both going to be feeling brilliant about picking up that bunch of tankiness that's going to be coming in. BB actually feeling a little bit better here towards the top side as he's bringing the battle to bin. It's a lot of Bs in that last sentence, but that's okay. We're going to check this 1v1 out, and I think it's just wet noodles, guys. I think we need to worry about it too much.
Sunfire getting some work done here.
A lot of value, yeah.
Yeah.
The old standing next to him is bad tactic. I've seen this play before, ladies and gentlemen, but now G2 look, no, they don't have quite the answer. As Knight might be going down in response, the flag and drag to try and finish it off as he gets caught on the minions, but I think was dead anyway. Moving on in, and now Beishuan will get knocked up. Not another spell shield in sight there. So the flag goes down, but that is going to be the last little hit.
That was really patient there from BLG. I think a lot of teams would have just flash ulted as On in this situation to try to look for the turn there, but they didn't know exactly where Hans Sama was, but likely knew that he was going to be nearby, so don't actually commit to the play there, as Labrov was playing very aggressively, so good judgment there. After what's initially here, again, another play on this flashless Taliyah, so they end up getting the kill. The problem is they're now stuck here, and Hans Sama is missing on the map, right? So it's in a moment like this as On comes over where he could consider trying to actually look for the counter ult, especially after Labrov comes through here, but they decide not to, knowing Hans Sama is probably headed up because he's not showing there on the bottom lane, so they don't overcommit. It ends up being a 1-for-1.
Yep. And I think that, like, if this was, as there's the, you know, the huge base drop as Bin makes his way towards the bottom side of the map, not necessarily the most ridiculous, but does give us that satisfaction of eviscerating the minions. But I think that, like, if it was Hans Sama that they were diving on over and over again, you'd be feeling way better if you're BLG, because Caps is already having a little bit of a rough time. He's the one that's borne the brunt of the, well, I just press my targeted ultimate button and then the hula hoops around him and it's just a bad time. Like, there's not a whole lot that Caps can do about that. But Hans Sama has been untouched, and of course they can't do it to him because he's got the Storm available.
I mean, Taliyah will do a decent amount of damage later on to this front line. It's going to take a while, but you know, Caps is the architect of this game. He is not actually the real damage dealer. He's not the real damage threat.
Or he's the construction company.
Sure, yeah. And at this point, you know, I feel like G2 are pretty happy with how things have evolved in this game. It's a very close one. The lead in gold is for BLG, but they need to hold on to that tempo because that won't last forever. This composition has a bit of an expiration date on it. With a small lead like this, it isn't yet enough.
Yeah, we'll see.
Especially with 1,000 of it being, of course, on that Scion.
Yeah. I feel like there are the answers later on in the game in sort of like an honest 5v5. Still do think that BLG's composition can work. And there is another shockwave. They find their target, and down goes Skumond. That is going to mean no smite for this battle around the Herald, but can they still win with those key cooldowns now used up as the rest of G2 now in position? Throwing out a lot of these rocks and Bin just putting himself in front of Hans Sama. And now with only one item, like Bin is just so hard to get through. So that will be the Rift Herald going down and BLG reasserting control of this game.
Yeah, really careful fight as
Yeah, the train coming on through as Lebrov is going to be able to make his way out. The Pop Blossom on absolutely all of them. And that is the Scion getting a kill, but Hans Sama gets another one as he's now looking to back away. Look at this health bar. The Blade Caller doing so much work. The Blade Caller from BB. And Knight is able to flash away, but still, I think there's the fear of God in them now.
I just don't know if I really agree with that play there from On. Hans Sama handles it so incredibly well there. 3,200 damage in the skirmish. He's already so big. Those are not the trades you want to kill for your top laner versus Hans Sama picks up another one, plays the rest of the fight out brilliantly as well. And it also means that tempo goes back to G2 a little bit here for this next dragon. You can see Hans Sama is ripping through this early into the game. And it's a quick rotation over from Lebrov and Broken Blade as well. With no ultimate here for Bejuan, I just can't see a contest for BLG.
Yep, that is not happening. So that is going to be the second dragon going over to G2. So they got the Infernal, and they now get the first mountain that is on offer, and there's a lone Chemtech dragon for BLG so
One thing
far.
I will say about BLG with this Nocturne Orianna is they have absolutely not hesitated. The execution has been crisp, and it is a simple composition to execute, but they know the right timings, and they have been able to get insane value out of this early, which has given them a pretty significant gold lead. But it's fights and overextensions like this, where On goes in here, Elk follows up, but you end up losing him. And then watch Hans Sama. Elk has turret aggro here. Knight also eats a shot. And then the follow-up from Broken Blade gets the flash out of Knight. Just so scary to be forcing these fights into this Hans Sama that's so huge already.
Exactly, and I think if Knight hadn't have moved like perfectly away from the never mind, we got another battle here as the quickness is going to be the answer, and this time the Paranoia Shockwave doesn't kill Caps. That's a change.
And already a bit of a maybe shift of the tides in this game. Zelk with a 1v1.
They're actually getting a lot of work done there with the Acathian Rain. Nicely done. As Humon making his way over On. Caught out of position. There's the knock-up, and the Nico is dead. Very dead.
Yeah, On heavily criticized for some of his performances at MSI. I thought his early game was fantastic in this one, especially in the laning phase, but has been looking for some really aggressive angles, and this one has been punished several times now for deaths. You know, really outside of Knight getting caught that one time and the Elk death, like that's all of the gold for G2 they've picked up has been on this support punishes. Yeah,
now Bejuan actually looking for Skumon here, but Lebrov is in the area. The fear is going to come on through, but Bejuan, you don't win the 1v1 anyway. So he's just going to go down. I do appreciate the courage.
Knight had TP, but didn't commit it there. And perhaps there's a miscommunication or a disconnect there on this one. We are going to see a TP potentially interrupted. Yep. It is interrupted.
Finn was trying to make his way in there. As now Elk is also trying to do the same, but Hans Sama is pretty happy with that. Elk going to have to ult away.
Feels like it's weird to say this, especially considering some of these veterans, but some nerves here on the side of BLG with some of the decisions we're making. Like Bin just teleporting in the face of a Cassante who's just going to say no is a bit of a weird one. Now Broken Blade's going to end up with TP advantage out of this. They end up winning the skirmish their top side, putting a huge dent into that turret. Knight will be able to get this in return, and the turret wasn't actually taken by G2.
That's feats of strength also going on.
That's
a bit
massive.
Of BLG. That is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Upgrading the shoes. That's feeling pretty good. I feel like G2 is still going to be happy about their position in the game. We can see that the money is still in favor of BLG. We know that if they get their ducks in a row and make this team fight work the way it's supposed to, it's still going to be very, very difficult for G2. But I think that they're looking at a 4-0 Xayah. They experienced the last time they played where Hans Sama was just absolutely terrifying. Probably thinking they're in a pretty good spot. And I wouldn't blame them.
When you consider that G2 has that extra mountain dragon, that's part of where I judge this situation to be slightly favorable for them, because they have some additional time. They have some wiggle room around how they want to play around objectives. They're the team with the Talia. They're the team with the Jarvan, you know, that could steal so easily, that could set up fights so easily, can disengage so easily for an objective take, that I really like the flexibility they have here. I mean, it's a Xayah composition, right? But at the end of the day, the comp is still formidable. If Hansama loses his ult for any reason, he's a prime target. This Orianna has farmed so well, sitting on 2 items. Super aggressive build here as well with the Luden's Companion, the Shadow Flame. So much burst. So maybe you avoid the Nocturne ultimate, but then you get killed by the Orianna anyways, or you get followed up on by Elk. So positioning is going to be paramount here for Hansama as we have a bit of a fight here.
Yeah, LeBron looking for a little bit of an angle as there is the wall, and On is just going to press R, does flash out of the way of the seismic shove, but the Paranoia not necessarily doing anything. And BLG now with a bunch of stuff on cooldown that they would like available for the next fight.
Certainly would, as Bin is just like winning the trade by running away.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty dangerous here for Bin, who does get knocked back and doesn't have a lot of exit options here, although he does have the ult, so never mind. Broken Blade is going to struggle to stop him from just driving away.
It's funny, until he all-outs, Bin is just like walking away and burning him and being like, yeah, well, I win this, by the way.
Yeah.
He is up an item.
The all-out did make it look like he did take a damage, though, so
yeah,
that was kind of nice.
Well, now ult advantage goes to Bin, which can be used, of course, as an engage or team fight joining kind of semi-global tool. Turret goes down here in mid lane after that exchange in the bottom lane, so a significant amount of gold going over. Hansama's lead isn't what it once was. Skumon very aggressively positioned.
Yeah, he is going to get a little bit afraid here, but otherwise not too much else going to happen. 50% health bar on Hansama is a little bit worrying, but he should be okay. Hasn't actually been back for a while. He's been sitting on just that crit cloak and the first 2 items for quite a while. So it could be that Infinity Edge is getting closer, or the Lord Doms if he does want to go that way. But I mean, I'm assuming Infinity Edge, you know.
Consider the Kaisa is only 250 gold behind. It's 0-1-2 to a 4-kill Xayah. They've injected so much gold into Elk here. He's staying so relevant. That is one of the big boons here for the side of BLG, is they are potentially going to look for a contest here.
BB's angle's actually kind of insane on this one, as Beishuan just going to get pushed back here by the Cassante. Spell Shield's a little bit early, and Broken Blade knows it, does have the ulti back off cooldown once again.
This is risky for G2, though.
I mean, I feel like they're just kind of saying thanks for the leash at the moment, because right now the map is looking pretty dark. They do manage to get this ward in. They might be able to just take that one down. 3,000 health on the Dragon. There's the Paranoia. The rest of G2 are pushed together, but that is a beautiful stopwatch there as the fear does come down, but Caps still at full health. Gets the seismic shove. Lebrov in a bunch of trouble. The Pop Blossom going to be coming on through, but it's only on to 1. It is Knight grabbing a kill, but Beishuan also going to go down. There's a second as the double comes in, but like you say, Hansama still at full health, and there is the Feather Recall. A terrifying Feather Storm as well, as he uses it aggressively, but these health bars are so ridiculously low. Knight finally to go down here as Skumon, the absolute hero, to try and make sure that someone dies. The Acathian Ray, my god, Caps almost just dies from that drive-by, as G2 with Soul Point after that walk away, I feel, with the win, even though they still don't have a gold lead. Well,
no, they don't have a gold lead, but this is what we've been talking about all game long, has been careful, man. You got one shield wisely used there, but Hansama is just so huge. It's so much damage in that team fight. After what looked like to me, when I see this Drake attempt for G2, I'm like, but they can engage from so far away. Yeah, there's no flash for On, but this is so risky. It's Caps' big arm guard here that is such a game changer that buys time. He perfectly times it here into the combo. Those are 2 big ultimates that, if used in this moment, would have been much bigger here. But even still, Elk does a ton of damage. Lebrov goes super low, but look at Hansama's positioning. Kite's back here. He has a little bit of heal from Caps, and he just rips through these health bars. No one can touch him. Elk cannot compete, not even close, with the damage. And even though the Scion is so fed, Hansama does so much, he nearly gets 3 extra kills in this fight. It's actually insane, as Knight's trying his best to turn this one around. Skumon says no. But yeah, like you said, it's still a cold lead here for BLG, but you can see the coaching staff here isn't too worried for G2.
Yeah, Dylan Falco, though, he knows it's still looking worrisome, right? Like, you could see that he's not reacting. He's like, there's still a long way to go in this game.
I mean, if Hansama gets a few of those extra kills there, I think the game is basically over. He doesn't quite get them, right?
Yeah.
And it's BLG's composition hanging on.
Like, Bin is so hard to kill. He was just putting feathers all over him.
And now you have Caps with the Zonias, so he can do it again against that combo. And the Feather Storm is available for Hansama again, so trying to lock down these carries is so difficult.
Bin trying to be persuaded to take damage, and he doesn't understand the
concept.
question.
Yeah.
It's not really a thing.
You know, it's so common for in any scenario with a draft like this into a Scion for Caps to build, for example, Leandri's, because like I got to get through that Scion, but he both trusts Hans Sama and his positioning and his damage so much, knows the game state, and says, "I'm just going to be safe. I'm going to go complete safety."
As well. He's died over and over again to that combo,
and I feel like, you know, it's a lot of damage he'll lose because of this, but it's absolutely the correct choice. When you have a 4-0 Xayah, you feel less bad about it.
Yep.
And I just feel like you can feel how well communicated G2 are on what their win cons are in this situation.
Well, there's another Shockwave combo, but it's onto a Rakan. And I've heard that Rakan has decent mobility.
He also doesn't even need to lock it there. It does flash ultimately, but still. BLG going to try to turn this into a Baron clear. I was going to say trying to take that would be pretty insane after using those ultimates.
There is an Otacon up and available as well, but there's not a lot of vision for G2. So it is going to be a reset for BLG, an opportunity for G2 to now make their way into the river and try and take down some of this vision.
One of the most critical things here is like G2 have all ultimates. The only real thing that can catch them is on flash ulting, and so they could just start this Baron. They're like, okay, clear your vision. I'm going to start this up. I have way more control. Caps could just zone them out. He could just lock them out here completely.
Well, there's no paranoia, and Beishuan doesn't have flash, so it's so hard for him to get here. They can just burn this one down. Oh my God, stolen by Knight! And G2, they were so close. They thought they had him in checkmate, but it's the Orianna that steals it away. And now they can just walk their way out if they'd like to. Bin just standing in front of the G2 members. It's highway robbery here for Billy Gaming.
And G2, all they can do is walk away with the tail tucked between their legs. There's no play to make here. LeBron's looking for something here, but I think he needs to be respectful. Hans Sama.
Well, Hans Sama really didn't want to press his R button, as there he goes. Paranoia comes in, but the Shockwave connects. Hans Sama down so incredibly low, and Elk is there with that killer instinct to try and take him down. He has to use the flash, though, and now finds himself in a very uncomfortable position, as it's a slight overextension here. Moves back into the waiting arms of Caps, who's over that wall. But BLG, they still managed to deal with Skumond, as well as that triple fountain laser that we were talking about.
I mean, BLG find the angles there. Like I said, if for any reason Hans Sama has to ult early, he really didn't want to. Then he becomes vulnerable. Then he becomes killable. Broken Blade not going to get the interrupt there, but it's tragedy after tragedy for G2. Full control over Baron. It's stolen. The follow-up there, the HP lead is there for BLG. They have the proper ultimates to go for the chase. They get the kill onto Hans Sama, and they're going to get their second dragon of the game as well. Potentially a steal?
Does this? It
there's a ward.
Absolute insanity, as Beishuan does have his smite up and available.
They're just going to pull it out of the pit, though. I don't know if he can look for it. He's trying.
Yep, looking for the opportunity, but it's Knight once again. Man, Knight's smites have been so good that he doesn't have.
Yeah, he's
still going to be able to lock that one down.
Let's watch this again here, how low it goes. It was a bit of a crazy one.
All right, the feather pull
220, a bit early on that one. Skumond not happy. But, I mean, it's a great play there from Knight. And the G2 coaching staff frustrated, but what happens next is even worse, as they're able to catch the Xayah fans in disbelief, because it looked like that was such a great Baron call. I mean, I still stand by it. I think it was. Agree. And it's this moment here where ultimately there's too many threats on the Hans Sama, and he does have to ult early.
And the flash as well was employed to try and get out of the Shockwave, but unfortunately it just couldn't flash far enough.
LeBron is trying to ult to try to peel, but he's just not quite there in time, and it's just the dominoes falling here, and suddenly BLG bought a huge, whole new lease on life with this composition, now in the driver's seat once again.
Well, we'll see whether G2 can battle their way back in this one, as of course, inner turret in mid lane does go down. Otacon now going to be their target, as in comes on, looking for Lebrov. They want to try and keep them out of this area, but that ward's still up and available. Actually has been turned off by the control ward, so it looks like G2 not going to be able to contest. And because BLG was so close in gold all game, even though things looked like they were going G2's way, now that something's actually gone BLG's way, they're 3,000 gold in the lead,
it starts to snowball pretty significantly. Now they have big experience leads across the board as well. Like Elk's got level 16 advantage. Knight's caught up to Caps. He was significantly behind in XP. Bin furthers his lead to over a level as well. And so, you know, you're getting all those additional stats. You're getting all those additional points and all your abilities. And, you know, looking at this next fight here, it will be potentially a 3-3 Dragon situation here if BLG pick it up, and then Bin just becomes so difficult to kill, even for our Fountain Laser in Hansama. IE is done here for Elk. He's gone for the crit build, which makes a ton of sense into Broken Blade. So even though the Xayah scales better, the Kai'Sa is still very relevant. And even just a straight-up front-to-back fight, if you can kill either carry, Caps or Hansama, particularly Hansama, if he is dead, Elk could just do whatever he wants.
That's absolutely right. As BLG now parking themselves in G2's jungle. Labrov trying to clear out vision where he can. They do manage to get some control vision down as there's the knock-up, very nicely done, has been actually crashing into the wall there momentarily, so the train not going to be up and available for the next little while. Broken Blade trying to deal with the minion wave in the mid lane, but he can be over here in a moment.
I mean, On's got flash and ult. This is so scary here for G2. They need to play respectfully.
I'm really worried about that Paranoia Shockwave combo as well. And that is going to be Skewmod being able to collect his red buff for the team. That feels good. That's not going to be stolen away. Of course, BLG have one on the other side of the map.
I really like how aggressively BLG play this, because oftentimes you're like, why are they doing this? The Drake's not even up for 2 minutes, but you're playing a Scion comp, the outers are gone. You know, where are you going to side lane here? Just start taking their jungle away. Just start taking vision away. Threaten the situation, because you have all of your crucial ultimates where if G2 make even one mistake, you practically win the game off of it. You get a kill or two, you get that inner, you get the inhibitor turret, and you start to really open up the base. And they're just constantly putting that threat on because they have control over the map right now, which is so powerful with a composition like this. You can basically choose where you want to pull that pressure point. Baron up in 45, and that's going to be the next place that BLG set up shop.
Yeah, Skewmon now does have his GA completed, so the Jarvan feeling pretty good as far as being able to get in amongst it. Still not with an IE done yet as Caps looking for a wall onto On, who does manage to get past that pesky
very punishable
turret.
now.
Yep, there's the train coming in, looking for Caps, finding the angle there. Doesn't get the CC though, does do the damage, but the Talia will be okay. Seismic Shove throws back this Scion, who is gonna flash away. The Shockwave finds the back line, but the redemption is so good. Now On looking for the angle, but he doesn't quite get it. He just goes down. The front line is now dead, and Hansama, he's not actually involved in the battle. The GA I was talking about before is gonna be utilized, but then Skewmon just explodes, and BLG, they have to sacrifice their support, but everyone else remains standing, and that's going to be
the timing of this as well, right before Baron, and I just don't agree with the call to look for the wall onto the Nico that has flash, has heal available. They really overextended on that one. Yes, Caps has the Zonias to avoid the combo, but he's not the target in this one. Hansama taking so much damage, they win to front to back, and that's Baron into Dragon here. Ben is the one who goes for the punish, right? Caps doesn't end up getting caught by the CC here, but look at now how split G2 are into a composition that can engage from so far away. And look at this, so much damage is absorbed by Ben here. Nice timing, but you're not the target. They get Hansama. It's a trick here. Hansama now so low on health that it's hard for him to walk up, and that means it's front-to-back territory here. Ben takes out Labrov. Skewmon left on his lonesome, dies twice. Will lose that critical GA. Baron goes over, and you got to imagine Dragon is with it. And G2 were in such a good position in this game, but now it feels that's all but washed away.
I tell you what, though, I love Knight's build, man. It makes the Orianna actually look like a damage dealer.
Yeah,
which is it's just fun. It's just nice to see. Shadow Flame Void stuff, and now what the heck did that? Did that hat just come out of nowhere?
Yeah, he just he pulled a hat out of a hat.
He pulled a hat out of a hat. He really did.
Wild.
Wow, that's an absurd amount of extra damage now complete. This is sort of maximum damage. He just needs 25 stacks on a Magi's, and then he's going to be feeling brilliant. As now Skewmon will find On. No snare to come through there as the Paranoia will come down. You can see Caps gets off the wall, is going to be able to survive, and now they've got a brief window where the lights will remain on no matter what BLG wants to do about it.
The defense a lot easier here for G2, even though they don't have the wall to stall. They can actually play up like this, like Hansama is, because that threat of the combo isn't there anymore. So this is going to take the wind out of the sails a little bit here for BLG's Baron push. They still have 80 seconds left on it, but I think G2, if they continue to just group like this, should be able to prevent any of these inhibitors from going down unless somebody gets picked, but setting up that pick is so challenging. I like the track on Skewmon here by On, making sure he can't Interpreters, oh boy.
Yeah, Hansama actually has to use the Featherstorm, so now not going to be able to defend this turret whatsoever. The Demolish proc almost just one-shotting that one as in goes on. Doesn't quite find as many as he wants, though, and the Redemption is going to keep them relatively healthy. Broken Blade, though, trying to be a front line as the root is going to come through onto a clone. And BLG not quite getting any kills, but man,
I did not expect that. I did not expect that. Big Orianna ult coming through and just coming in and setting that one up without the Nocturnal, just walking forward and looking for it. And I take back what I said about the inhibitors, is this one in the mid lane is very vulnerable.
God, Knight does so much damage. Hansama lost half of his health bar from a W. He just pressed Dissonance and Hansama has to walk back home. And BLG, they're going to take 2 inhibitors in the blink of an eye.
Back up here. They could look for the end.
Yep, let's see whether they find an angle here, as the Shockwave could be so pivotal. Bin could tank these turrets for about 15 years. There it is. He finds the backline as Beishuan gets on in there, Elk with the killer instinct, and that is all of G2 lying on the floor in the blink of an eye. The wall not going to do anything good for G2 here, and they're going to have to say goodbye to their first Nexus in this best of 3.
What a great game to start off the series, though. 4 kills for Hansama early, looked invincible, but all it takes is just a few errors, a Baron steal into a few punishes as G2 started to get more and more desperate, trying to fish for picks, looking for that pick onto On in the mid lane. Really felt like it was such a huge turning point in the game, because at that point, it looked like, yes, the pendulum had swung back to BLG's favor, which is, I think, why Caps was looking for that type of desperate play. But after that moment, after that big team fight win, they never had control. There was nothing they were going to get after that. Baron goes over, and the siege was real. And Knight, man, what an insane performance on this Orianna.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. Watching an Orianna do actual damage was an absolute pleasure to watch. But now it is time for us to take a short break. This is not over yet. More of this best of 3 after this.